Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take the source material you've sent our way, all the articles, the research, the analysis, and we pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge. And this week, we are diving into something that feels less like a football game and maybe more like a four-way algebra equation.
That's a good way to put it.
We're talking about the huge Week 18 NFL matchup between the Carolina Panthers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
That's right. This game kicks off the final weekend of the 2025-26 regular season, and our mission today is really to cut through all that noise and just give you a shortcut to being fully informed.
Okay.
We're going to focus on two pretty critical areas. First, the incredibly complex NFC South division playoff scenarios. I mean, we're talking about a situation where a losing team can still actually win the title.
Which is just wild to think about.
It is. And then second, we'll get into the really granular player analysis that's driving the betting markets for this, this decisive game.
Yeah, and the sources you shared are great. We have some breaking down the core game setup, some detailing the really intricate and frankly just absurd tiebreaker rules for the division. Plus, we have specific targeted predictions on key players. We're talking about rookie phenomenon Tedero McMillan and the red zone veteran Mike Evans. This isn't just about reading a scoreboard. It's about understanding the deep inter-team dependencies that really define Week 18.
Exactly.
Wait, let's unpack this, starting with the biggest prize.
We have to start with the core context, right? This Panthers-Bucs game, it kicks off 4:30 p.m. Eastern on Saturday in Tampa, is, at its heart, a fight for the NFC South division title.
Right.
For one team, it's a chance to just clinch it right there. For the other, it's a shot to create absolute chaos on Sunday.
And the sources really emphasize that this high-stakes situation, it stems directly from how messy this division has been all season. Yeah. So can you just give us a quick recap of how we even got here?
Absolutely. I mean, you have to go back to when they last met in Week 16. That game was so instrumental in setting all of this up.
Okay.
It was a classic divisional slugfest. Low scoring, came right down to the wire. Carolina managed to pull out the win on a game-winning field goal with, 2.2 NL left on the clock.
And that was the one. That was the kick that put them in first place.
That was it. That victory propelled the Panthers into first place, and they've managed to hold on to that spot ever since.
But meanwhile, the sources are kind of painting this picture of a Buccaneers team that is just reeling.
Oh, completely. The momentum is absolutely not on Tampa's side. They have stumbled badly, losing 4 straight games and 7 of their last 8 coming into this game.
Wow.
So Carolina has the momentum, but Tampa Bay has the home field advantage for this final showdown.
So let's start with the cleanest resolution, the simplest path to just ending all this drama.
Okay, the simple way. That is a Panthers victory on Saturday.
Just win the game.
Just win the game. If Carolina wins, they secure the division title outright. It's over. They would finish 2 games ahead of Tampa Bay, and the Buccaneers are immediately eliminated from playoff contention.
Done. Everything's decided, and we can all just breathe easy on Sunday.
You can all breathe easy.
But here's where it gets really interesting, right? Because the source material is mostly focused on what happens if the Bucs win.
Yes.
And that Saturday victory just throws the entire division into pure chaos.
That is the pivotal moment, because if the Bucs win, we have to wait. We have to wait until Sunday afternoon for the final results. The entire division champion then hinges on the outcome of one other game.
The Falcons versus the Saints.
Exactly. And our sources break down 2 very distinct potential Sunday outcomes that decide who gets that banner.
Okay, let's tackle scenario A first.
Right.
This is the 2-team tie. So this happens if the Bucs win on Saturday, and then the Atlanta Falcons lose their game to the New Orleans Saints on Sunday.
Right. In that situation, Tampa Bay and Carolina are tied for first. And this is where, the NFL's arcane rule book comes out.
Calculators come out.
The calculators come out. Head-to-head records would be split 1-1. The next major tiebreaker is your divisional record, which, after a Bucs win, would also be even.
Okay, so then what?
So it moves down the chain to this highly specific and often decisive category of common games.
And the sources are crystal clear on how that tiebreaker shakes out.
They are. The Buccaneers hold the common games tiebreaker advantage over the Panthers. So in this scenario, Bucs win Saturday, Falcons lose Sunday, Tampa Bay wins the division, they go to the playoffs.
I have to pause here because I think for a lot of people listening, common games just feels like the league is digging for a reason.
It does feel that way.
When the 2 most obvious metrics, head-to-head, divisional record, are equal, why is this specific metric so important? Why does it trump everything else?
That's a really great question, and the sources highlight this is where the NFL tries to prioritize consistency across the whole schedule. Once the direct measures are exhausted, the league wants to see who performed better against the shared schedule of non-divisional opponents. It's supposed to be a broader measure of, overall team strength.
So it's about who beat the same teams outside the division.
Exactly. And the data just shows that Tampa Bay's wins against those shared opponents were just strong enough to give them the edge in this very specific, very strange situation.
Fascinating. Okay, now for the real headache. Scenario B, the dreaded three-team tie.
Yes.
This happens if the Bucs win and the Falcons also beat the Saints on Sunday.
This is where it gets truly bizarre. If Atlanta wins, they create a three-way tie for the division title with the Buccaneers and the Panthers.
Okay.
And in this scenario, the Panthers win the division.
Wait. So Carolina loses its game.
Loses their game.
And they only win the division because a totally different team, Atlanta, pulls off a win the next day.
You got it. Think about that. The team that loses on Saturday is actively, desperately cheering for the Falcons on Sunday.
That is peak Week 18 chaos.
It absolutely is. And the reason for this outcome is simple, if not exactly intuitive. The first tiebreaker for a three-team tie is the overall head-to-head record among only the three tied teams.
So common games go out the window.
Gone. We're not looking at that anymore. We go right back to the internal division matchups between those three.
And this is where Carolina's work earlier in the season just pays off massively.
It really does. The sources provided the exact records for this hypothetical. The Panthers would finish 3-1 against that group.
And that's because they swept Atlanta.
That's the key.
Yeah.
A dominant 2-0 record versus Atlanta and 1-1 versus Tampa Bay. The Buccaneers would be 2-2. And the Falcons, well, they'd finish 1-3.
So Carolina's 3-1 record is just clearly the best.
It's the best record among the tied teams, and that hands them the division title.
So really what the sources are emphasizing is how Week 18 often ends up rewarding teams that establish that early divisional dominance, like Carolina sweeping Atlanta, even if they stumble right at the finish line.
It's a deep rewind on the season's ledger for sure.
And just to round this all out, the sources note that the Falcons are actually a field goal favorite at home against the Saints.
They are.
Which makes that three-team chaos scenario pretty viable.
That margin makes that other game extremely relevant.
Yeah.
Yes, it means you absolutely cannot rule out that bizarre three-way outcome.
Okay, let's pivot entirely. The macro context is the divisional title, but the sources also detail how those high stakes translate to micro decisions on the field.
Right, and that's where the betting markets come in.
Exactly. Your material zeroed in on two players who really exemplify two different betting philosophies. You have the emerging volume play with McMillan, and then the high-certainty defensive mismatch with Evans.
That's a great way to summarize it. We can shift our focus to rookie wideout Tetaroa McMillan first. I mean, he's already making waves. He's the betting favorite for NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year.
And the projection you sent over suggests taking him over 60.5 receiving yards. It's priced at -112.
Yeah, and that yardage mark feels, pretty manageable, especially when you look at what he did against this same Tampa Bay team just 2 weeks ago.
Right. In Week 16, he had 6 catches for 73 yards and a touchdown on 10 targets.
That production is key, but the sources are quick to highlight the biggest limitation in his otherwise very impressive campaign. Volatility. While he averages over 7 targets a game for the whole season, his volume has been just all over the map in the last 4 weeks. A total roller coaster of 2, then 4, then that 10-target game, and then right back down to just 4 targets last Sunday.
Okay, so wait. If Carolina's quarterback, Bryce Young, had what one source called an awful showing against Seattle last week, doesn't that make this assumption that he'll suddenly force the issue and look McMillan's way? Doesn't that feel incredibly risky?
It is a fair question.
Is that a calculated risk the sources believe in, or is it just wishful thinking because the game is so important?
I think it's a calculated risk that's heavily mitigated by the circumstances. The analysis really hinges on 2 strong factors. Yes, there's the expectation that the coaching staff will pressure Young to rely on his best weapon in a must-win game, a sort of calculated force-feeding.
Right.
But critically, Tampa Bay's secondary is significantly weakened. They are missing starting cornerback Jamel Dean and cornerback Zion McCollum.
Okay, so the bet isn't just on Young's decision-making, it's on McMillan facing backups. That really changes the risk profile.
Precisely. You're betting on the matchup advantage. And the historical data, it reinforces this. The data highlights a really key predictive stat. McMillan has drawn at least 8 targets in 9 games this year. And in 8 of those 9 games, he has gone over 60 receiving yards.
Wow. That is a remarkable correlation. So the volume is basically the key. If he gets 8 targets, he's almost guaranteed to cross this line.
Pretty much. And 5 of those 9 games saw him clear 70 yards, which is why the sources also suggest, maybe a half-unit secondary play on McMillan to hit 70-plus receiving yards at plus 132.
It's a bet that the urgency of Week 18, plus the favorable defensive matchups, it mandates a return to high target volume for him.
It does. Now, let's transition from that bet on volume and potential to the second player analysis, which is really a bet on certainty.
Yeah.
If McMillan is a play on emerging talent, the sources suggest Mike Evans anytime touchdown scorer at plus 165. Well, that's a bet on a repeatable, known defensive breakdown.
Mike Evans is the definition of a prototypical red zone threat. He's massive, he's reliable, and he just fundamentally changes the geometry of the end zone.
He is. He's a 6'5" veteran receiver who has been the absolute staple of Tampa Bay's red zone offense for years. And even though his 2025 season was shortened by injury, he missed time from late October to early December, he has still managed to rack up 3 touchdown catches in just 7 games.
He's hot right now.
He is. Crucially, he has scored in each of the last 2 weeks, including against the same Carolina defense in Week 16.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the reason that plus 165 price is so appealing, it comes down entirely to the Panthers' specific and documented defensive weakness.
That is the key analytical insight here. The sources show the Panthers have an alarming, recurring vulnerability when defending big-bodied receivers in the red zone.
They just struggle physically.
They struggle to compete for those contested catches, especially on things like fade routes or back shoulder throws. It is a documented pattern of failure.
And the material you shared listed several specific examples of this failure just from the recent schedule. So it proves it's a systemic issue, not just a one-off mistake.
Yeah, we have 4 concrete instances cited. Look at Week 12. San Francisco's John Jennings scored on them, just muscling through coverage.
I remember that one.
Then in Week 13, the Rams' Devontae Adams scored not once, but twice, exploiting that exact inability to stop a contested catch near the goal line. Saints wideout Chris Olave, a big target himself, found the end zone in Week 15.
And the most important example, of course, being Evans himself scoring against them just 2 weeks ago.
Exactly. When we talk about a repeatable pattern, this is it. The sources detail that Evans' touchdown against them came on a simple fade route where the Carolina defensive back he lost the jump ball. He lost it because of the height and strength mismatch.
It's not a complex play. It's a physical failure against a known threat.
That's it. That documented, ongoing defensive failure against specific types of players makes that plus 165 price extremely compelling for a guy who scores in that exact way.
This deep dive really has highlighted the duality of this whole weekend, hasn't it? We started with the almost impenetrable complexity of the NFC South tiebreakers.
Wild.
Where the outcome of a game played 1,000 miles away dictates the division winner.
Yeah, it's truly remarkable. We have an outcome where a team that loses on Saturday could potentially win the division purely because they dominated an auxiliary opponent, Atlanta, earlier in the year.
And then we shift gears completely to the micro-player dynamics. You've got the bet on McMillan, which relies so heavily on a risky assumption that his target volume must return.
Right, because the stakes are high and the secondary is weak.
Versus the bet on Evans, which relies on the cold, hard certainty of a known, repeatable defensive failure pattern.
2 very different ways of looking at the board.
So what does this all mean for you as you watch the final weekend unfold? I think the sources show us just how deeply interdependent this final week of the season is. The division title requires you to watch not only the action in Tampa, but also the results of that other Falcons-Saints game on Sunday afternoon.
And this raises an important question for you, the viewer, as you analyze the predictive strength of these sources. When it comes to predicting game outcomes in a high-stakes Week 18, which factor provides a more reliable foundation?
That's a good question.
Are you tracking the volatility of a quarterback's future intent? Betting on Young to force targets to McMillan despite his recent inconsistency?
Right.
Or are you just backing the physical certainty of Evans's height and strength against a proven defensive vulnerability? Which signal is the truer guide to performance when the pressure is at its absolute highest?
A fascinating point to chew on as the final weekend of the NFL season dictates who makes it to the dance. Thank you for sharing your sources for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.